Welcome to the Rant Rehab Center, where I rant about anything my $5 a month plus patrons ask me to rant about. Today's rant is going to be for Hermit's Nook, who asks me, in the next UFC fight, what does O'Malley need to do to get the win? Can he, and how is he going to pull off the upset? So, this rant is in reference to UFC 292. I don't know how many of you know this, but I am pretty much a UFC super fan, so I pay very close attention to every pay-per-view and fight night card for the most part. And I have something of a hot take, I guess, on UFC 292, which is going to make this video susceptible to aging incredibly poorly. Especially because I think Sean O'Malley is going to win in emphatic fashion against Aljamain Sterling. I think it's very far from, some sort of lopsided match. I don't think anybody's saying that on the side of Sean O'Malley. It's not like that. I acknowledge that Aljo has many avenues to win and that he has a decent chance of being able to access each of those avenues. But I do think that's outweighed by O'Malley's opportunities to finish him. I think that O'Malley, God, this could age so poorly, but I think that O'Malley can finish Aljo by KO, and I don't know why. I can see him catching him with a submission. Aljo's going into this fight. He's just training. He's primarily training his striking. For however reliable watching his YouTube channel is in terms of being able to understand his training patterns. It seems that he's very, very focused on striking. He's talking about he wants to knock O'Malley out, beat him at his own game. But I just saw the Makhachev-Volkanovski fight not too long ago. And it seemed that Makhachev was just training striking for the most part. It's obviously not so black and white. He was very heavily training striking though, and Volkanovski was very heavily training grappling. And because of that, they seemed to have sort of caught up to each other and performed very, very well in those sort of respective facets of the game. Because the other one wasn't necessarily training it as religiously during the camp. I don't know if that's actually how it works. I have never trained MMA, and it's probably my biggest shortcoming, or my biggest the biggest hurdle for me as somebody who tries to. I'd hardly call myself an analyst, but as somebody who tries to predict UFC fights, it's a pretty big hurdle for me because I don't really know exactly what that's like. But from everything I've seen, I feel like Sean O'Malley's had so much time to prepare. I know Aljo's got the weight cut. That's always a factor. Aljo's weight cut is always going to be a factor. If he has a bad weight cut, I think he has a much, much lower chance of beating O'Malley. I think if his injuries start bothering him again, it's a really quick turnaround. I think there's another good shot that if he gets injured seriously, he's not going to have an amazing chance to beat O'Malley, frankly. And there's just not any concerns for O'Malley. Aljamain has a lot of pressure on him as well. People are throwing around the term bantamweight goat and all that. I don't know. I haven't seen Dominic Cruz fight, but I've not been overly impressed with Aljamain Sterling's title reign. I think his title reign essentially consists of a split decision where he got the belt and then one split decision defense of the belt. That's it. Because for his other title wins, he has two. He has a win over TJ Dillashaw, who is injured, and it's usually I give people some credit for beating an injured opponent, but TJ Dillashaw came in with effectively one arm. TJ Dillashaw was probably at about, I don't know, maybe less than 50% of as dangerous as he would have been if he came in with two arms. I just didn't see that as TJ Dillashaw was just not a UFC caliber fighter in that fight. He was he was the only reason that he didn't call it off is because, he was getting towards the latter half of his career and he wanted one last shot at the belt. But even he knew going into it that he really couldn't give it. It wasn't the best Dillashaw, but it wasn't the best Dillashaw by a long shot. That was probably the worst TJ Dillashaw we've ever seen, and it has nothing to do with the way that Aljamain performed. So I feel like that's just such a thoroughly fluky victory. And I wouldn't obviously say that TJ would have beat Aljo. I was predicting Aljo to win. But I think it was a really, really, really competitive fight that was made very not competitive by catastrophic injury. So I don't really count that. And then, of course, he was losing to Peter Yan He was about to lose the fight, and then he won by disqualification. I don't count that as like a legacy win. That's not a win. Like, you could say that it's not a win for Peter either, but I mean, you can't call that a title win for Aljo and then be counting like, oh, well, he has more defenses than Dominic Cruz because he won the title without even having to win a fight. It just seems so bizarre. And I don't know. It's just a bit of a problem. It's just a bit of a problem. Yan and Cejudo are great wins to have. O'Malley, time will tell if it's going to be a great win or not, if he does get the win. But I'm not overly convinced that Aljo's like this super versatile elite of the elite fighter. Obviously, he's at the top of the bantamweight division by no mistake. I think he probably is, if not he is the best fighter at bantamweight. But I think he's taking this fight on pretty unideal circumstances. And frankly, Sean O'Malley's not the person to be fighting on ideal circumstances. I think O'Malley is very opportunistic. He's going to be very dangerous throughout the entirety of the fight. I think he's going to show his heart in this fight. He's coming off of the biggest win of his career. It's just, there's so much momentum in the favor of him, and he's so dangerous everywhere. I just can't look at Aljo's striking anymore. And like, it's not that bad because it kind of works sometimes. Like, it seems to be like he probably, in my opinion, won the first round, mostly striking against Petr Yan in the rematch. I don't even talk about the Dillashaw fight, but he was doing good in the striking versus Cejudo relatively. But I mean, when you think about how short and stubby Cejudo is really, and I don't think Cejudo's necessarily in his older age now faster than O'Malley. So I just feel like O'Malley's really going to be able to touch up Aljo on the feet. And in terms of Aljo's takedowns, it's a little thing, but I'm pretty sure Aljo's gotten kneed in the face going for a takedown by every single opponent he's faced so far. It's just that against, Moraes, it was the only time that it landed like really hard, and he got, obviously, oh, I dropped my phone. But he got knocked out cold by Moraes. I just don't know. I feel like Sean's knees, as we know, are like one of his best weapons, and maybe I'm just having my opinion swayed by the Petr Yan fight, which I rewatched recently. But Sean's knees are going to be really brutal. His frame makes it so that if he needs somebody who's going for a takedown on him, it is going to land a lot harder. And I just think he's going to be so ready for it. And I don't even think Sean has to be at 100% to be able to thoroughly outstrike Aljo. That's the thing. The fight starts on the feet, and Aljo is just so ugly on the feet, man. It's so concerning to watch because it looks like he's leaving himself open so much. And I know it's deceptive, and that's part of the merit of his style. But it's really tough to watch when you see somebody as just obviously clean, quick, rangy, powerful, good as Sean O'Malley on the feet. It just seems like it's going to be a really big problem if he can't immediately get him down. And I believe in Sean O'Malley's ability to stay on the feet if that's what he's focusing on doing. I just, for some reason, I can't freaking see Aljo cracking O'Malley. This could age so poorly. But I'm about to get into the part that is going to potentially age the worst. And that is, I'm saying that there's a possibility that O'Malley gets a sub. And before you click off the video, I know you're probably thinking this is like absolutely ridiculous. And I'm not going to claim to be some sort of expert. I'm not the MMA guru here. I'm the NMA guru. Ask me about Ousmane Gadayo and I'll give you an expert opinion. But I'm no pro at this. But really, Sean O'Malley's pure grappling, like even off his back and stuff, he's been participating in a ton of grappling tournaments, or not a ton, but he's been reasonably consistently participating in grappling tournaments throughout his career. He said it's what he's been working on for almost his entire career in nearly every matchup, because he knows people are going to try to take him down. And I think just because we've seen him, honestly, we've seen him on his back so little, except against like Chito Vera where he was in a compromised state, and against Petr Yan where he wasn't expecting a takedown, which he will be against Aljo, that I feel like he has a lot of surprises ready. And I feel like he's going to be very quick. very opportunistic, and I could see Aljo even being slightly overconfident on the ground. Like once he gets him there, obviously, he's in a fight. He's not going to start showboating or anything like that. But I really can see him underestimating O'Malley's ground game, and a lot of people underestimating O'Malley's ground game, and O'Malley being able to threaten a submission. And, maybe that'll just be a way for O'Malley to, shift Aljo into a position which allows O'Malley to just get back up and put it back on the feet. Maybe not, but we will have to see. We will have to see. For me, this is the fight that's going to decide how good Aljo really is in my mind, because I don't know, it's not his fault at all. I haven't seen much out of him that I could concretely say like this is like a profound weakness of his as a fighter, but it's just due to no fault of his own. He's had the flukiest title run that is just so hard to give him credit for ever. And I think if he gets a dominant victory here, even though Sean O'Malley's not the most proven contender, I think it's definitely going to solidify him for me as like a truly like dominant bantamweight champion. And it's going to make me start considering putting him over Dominic Cruz in the GOAT conversation, which I'm already honestly considering, just because of the fact I've never seen Dominic Cruz fight. For all I know, Dominic Cruz could have just like controversial split decisions like for all of his fights, and I would actually look back and think he lost like half of them, and maybe he was doing it against like the number 10th ranked guy. I don't know anything about Cruz's reign, but just from what it sounds like, if I can take it at face value and compare it to what Aljo has accomplished in the sport, you obviously have the newer fighters are better than older fighters tilt to it, but that doesn't really have anything to do with dominance. And that's sort of what people are talking about when they're talking about greatest fighter. Anyway, it's a really nebulous conversation. Whoever you have, I'm sure there is a solid argument for it, unless you're like saying, I don't think you can say TJ is the best. I'd be pretty mad at that, but that's just because TJ's a roid head. Freaking got caught blatantly with steroids and then tried to get another title shot and held up the entire division. And, just wasted Aljo's time, and then was like, guys, I'm so sorry that I just held up the entire division and wasted Aljo's time and just like totally let down this entire fight card and didn't even mention this in the build-up or anything like that. I'm so sorry, guys. It's like, dude, okay, you still did it. You still did it, and you still did all those drugs. So I don't like TJ Dillashaw at all. I like Corey Sandhagen though, but that's not related to any of this, and I don't know what I'm talking about. The point is, Aljo seems to leave himself... Oh my gosh, he just seems to leave his chin so open sometimes when he's throwing, or when he's feinting shots, or when he's taking shots, and that's how, of course, he got KO'd against Moraes. He's been kneed by Cejudo when he was trying to take a shot. He's been kneed by Jan when he was trying to take a shot. They just didn't land as hard, and I think Sean has the ability to land like a devastating knee there. But obviously, I'm not going to make a prediction just off of his chance to land a knee alone. I think he could really get it done from a range. Aljo does not fight people as long and as quick as O'Malley, really. Aljo does not fight at a reach disadvantage, like ever, pretty much. So I think he could be a bit surprised, and he might get caught at the end of some of Sean's punches. I believe in Sean's, ability to finish. Aljo has been knocked out before. He has rough weight cuts. I don't think he has like the greatest chin in the world or anything. I don't think it's a bad chin, but I don't think it's a particularly good chin either. So all those things to keep in mind. I think the way he gets it done is by finish. I just think he's so vastly superior to Aljo on the feet, and he just has the power to be able to put him away. And so that's why I have this somewhat controversial prediction. I think people might be giving Aljo slightly too much credit. Again, this could age terribly, but also in the event that O'Malley does win by a submission, or like a deep submission attempt is like a pivotal point in O'Malley's victory, then I told you so. So yeah, I got it 55-45 in favor of Sean O'Malley. Not the best circumstances for Aljo. A lot of question marks, I think. So yeah.